Hello and welcome to Top Story. Today, Russia and the announcement by Chief Prosecutor Yuri Chaika that the authorities have arrested 10 men in connection with the killing last October of investigative reporter Anna Politkovskaya. The murder of Politkovskaya in a contract-style killing provoked international condemnation of the Kremlin for its failure to defend freedom of speech. She was a fierce critic of President Vladimir Putin, whose exposés of abuses by the security services in Chechnya earned her the hostility of the Russian establishment. Putin was slow to condemn her murder, although he eventually described it as a disgusting crime. Her supporters said she had paid the price for taking on the authorities. On Monday, though, the chief prosecutor said that the evidence pointed to a conspiracy planned abroad. Those arrested included an officer in the Federal Security Service, police officers, and the leader of a Chechen organized crime group. The chief editor of Novaya Gazeta, the liberal newspaper that Politkovskaya wrote for, said he was amazed that conclusions were being reached before the investigation was even over. Well, joining me now to discuss the arrest is Galina Ackerman, an expert on Russia and former translator of Politkovskaya's books into French. Thanks very much for being on Top Story. 10 men arrested in connection with Politkovskaya's killing. On the surface, at least, it looks like progress is being made.
Sure, it looks on the surface, but until we know who these people are and on what charges are they really arrested, I mean, what are the proofs, evidence against them, we cannot judge whether it's serious or just a kind of a cover for not really advancing in the investigation. As you probably know, there will be, of course, the anniversary of the murder of Anna Politkovskaya on October 7, but this is still more than a month ahead of us. But there is another date, and it troubles me that the announcement has been made just before this date. On August 30, Anna would have been 49. It is her anniversary day, and the opposition, all the main groups of the opposition, all the leaders of the opposition, called for a huge meeting in Moscow.
So you think this is an attempt to take the wind from out of their sails?
Sure, because the main question and at this meeting would have been what's going on with the investigation, because for so many months there was a total silence on this case.
Politkovskaya herself was not greatly impressed by the Russian system of justice. And she once wrote, and I just quote this now, yes, stability has come to Russia. It's a monstrous stability under which nobody seeks justice in law courts which flaunt their subservience and partisanship. Nobody in his or her right mind seeks protection from the institutions entrusted with maintaining law and order because they are totally corrupt. How do you think she would have reacted to Monday's announcement?
I think she would have said probably what I'm saying right now, that let's wait and see, because before we see any evidence, how can we appreciate whether it's serious or not? I mean, there can be also an accusation which is not really based on the facts.
Why was it that Politkovskaya's work so irritated the Kremlin, particularly what she wrote about Chechnya?
I think there is a deep reason for that. You know, after Milosevic, one cannot entirely exclude that one day there will be also an international court for the crimes against humanity and war crimes in Chechnya. She personally denounced a lot of people who are simply war criminals. And this is a very serious accusation. Today, these people don't feel much threatened, but the threat might arise sooner or later. So, since she was practically the only one working that hard on these cases, you know, really following year after year what's going on, and particular crimes and their investigations. So she represented a threat for a lot of people, potential threat. So, and also, of course, if there are war criminals, there are also those who gave orders, and that points to the Kremlin.
Well, as you say, most of her friends and supporters have pointed the finger of blame at the Russian political establishment. But it's interesting that the chief prosecutor yesterday, Yuri Chaika, has attempted to do exactly the opposite. He's pointed the finger of blame at abroad. He said only people based abroad would have wanted to stoke up internal dissent, internal problems in Russia in this way.
Yes, that's true. You know, there is a very widespread thesis in the pro-Kremlin press, which is now, of course, the majority, which claim that people who organized this murder, as some other murders, like, for instance, Litvinenko's poisoning in London, was in person Boris Berezovsky, who is this oligarch who was obliged to flee Russia and who got the political refuge, political asylum in London.
It's becoming very convenient, isn't it, to blame everything on Boris Berezovsky?
Of course, it is very convenient. One represents him like a kind of a demonic figure who has immense power and money to destabilize Russia. And indeed, Berezovsky made some attempts to destabilize the regime of Putin, like publishing the book by Litvinenko about explosions of the buildings in '99 in Moscow, which were then one of the main reasons for the Second Chechen War. But between publishing a book, even a very subversive book against Kremlin, is one thing, and hiring, killers, it's something else. And nobody seriously thinks, among people who understand the situation, that Boris Berezovsky would have been able to organize such a thing.
It's also interesting that the chief prosecutor has tried to link these arrests with two other murders. One of the American journalist Paul Khlebnikov, who worked for Forbes magazine in 2004, and also Andrei Kozlov, the deputy head of the central bank last year. Again, it's a bit too convenient. Very briefly, if you would, Galina.
Of course, it's just conspiracy theory. It is very convenient to link everything together and to accuse one person. They know for sure, Russian authorities, that British won't deliver them Berezovsky, so they can accuse him of anything. It's kind of a scapegoat. So it's very easy. There is another...
I'm going to have to interrupt you there, I'm afraid. Thanks very much to Galina Ackerman. Join us again for another edition of Top Story tomorrow. Goodbye for now.